Hi, I'm Mark and this is Let's Vibe. So, with this video, I just wanted to talk about a subject that inevitably comes up when you're dealing with crystals and semi precious stones. And that's the subject of ethical crystal buying and ethical sourcing. So, unfortunately, as with so many of the things that we buy these days, um, there's a lot of exploitation that goes on around the world. And as crystals and these healing stones are becoming more popular among the mainstream, that of course has led to an increase in demand, which has really caused a boom for the crystal and gemstone industry. But the unfortunate fact is that there are many places around the world where these stones and crystals are being mined by people in very exploitative situations. People living in poverty. Um, in some cases, it's child labor. Um, Basically, just not a good situation for the people who are actually digging up these crystals. So, when it comes to buying and shopping for crystals, it's important to be aware that this exploitation exists in the crystal and gem worlds. You know, we've all heard about blood diamonds or conflict diamonds, you know, where diamonds were being mined in West Africa, I think in Sierra Leone, and um, or in the DR Congo, and those diamonds are then sold to raise money for conflict, for war and terrorism. So the same kind of thing goes on with these stones, and as these crystals are becoming more popular, that increases the value on the market for these stones, and that in turn fuels, you know, the these situations where we have conflict minerals, like in the DR Congo. There's a lot of very rare earth minerals there, and they're being mined by people who are enslaved or children or just some really very unhealthy, dangerous situations. So, countries like Madagascar, you know, a lot of our stones come from uh, Madagascar, like citrine and different varieties of quartz, certain what else? Certain, I want to say certain, oh, jaspers, I think, like sea jasper. There's quite a few really beautiful stones that come out of Madagascar, but it's well known that the people mining these stones in Madagascar, you know, they're making pennies a day. And so it's an exploitative situation for the miners. And so I believe that, you know, the first thing is just being conscious of this, being aware that this is happening. And then I would encourage you to do some of your own reading, your own research into the different locations where we get these crystals and what the situations are for the people involved in the mining. Um, and then with that information, you can then go out and go to a crystal shop or shop online. And basically, what I do is I look for stones or I look for sellers that who know where their stones came from. So I like to use Etsy for shopping for crystals, and a lot of sellers on Etsy will tell you where the stone came from. And so if I see that a stone is from a place like Madagascar or DR Congo, um, I pass that. I pass that one by. Um, I choose not to buy any. Now that I've read, because I in the past I did buy some stones that came from Madagascar, and then I read about what was going on, the conditions for the workers, and so now I choose not to buy any stones that come from Madagascar. Um, and instead, what I like to do is I like to look for sellers in the US that are selling stones that were mined in the US, because the US is actually very rich with minerals and gemstones and all the different crystals that we use. The US has an abundance of stones and minerals. So I like to buy stones that come from the US, because then I can be pretty sure that the mining was at least a little more ethical. And sometimes sellers will list, or they'll not list, but mention, when you're buying a stone, they'll mention whether or not the stone was mined. Well, not whether or not. They'll mention if the stone was mined ethically. So, if you see a stone or crystal that comes from some country, um, some sellers might include that information that it was ethically mined. Now, I don't know any details beyond that, what made it ethical, who did the mining. They don't go into too much detail, but just be aware that that information is sometimes included. Um, so I think looking for stones that are sourced in the U.S. is a good way to avoid, unwittingly buying stones that maybe a child had mined. Um, and in the end, I believe it really comes back to your own intuition, your own feelings. Get in tune with your intuition. When I'm shopping for crystals, I'm not just shopping for the biggest stone or the one that looks the shiniest. I'm shopping with my intuition. I go into a crystal shop, I'm walking around the different stones, looking at them, picking them up, and I'm feeling the vibrations. And I think that that is the best way to shop for crystals, is to use your intuition and combine that intuition with the knowledge of ethical sourcing and the situations that exist around the world. And I think that's about all I wanted to say on this subject. I encourage you to leave any questions or comments below, and thank you for vibing with me.